This is Together, an Ada Bible Church podcast about the world of marriage, where we attempt to invite you to explore the ways marriage works and doesn't work. From practical ways of learning to biblical inspiration, we invite you to listen to other professionals and couples to help enrich your marriage.
So, welcome back, Together listeners. We have in the studio Samuel Jones, Corey Olson, and Kelly Bonnywell.
Hello.
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 So, leading question for you guys. Do you like ice cream?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's kind of
Very
a
much so.
no-brainer.
Yes.
Like, who says no to liking ice cream?
Si, senor.
Okay. So what kind of flavors do you guys like? Because the unique thing about ice cream is there's many flavors of ice cream.
There's something that goes off in my brain. I saw a picture of it the other day. 8:30 every night in the summer. I have a craving for ice cream. I need to go get it.
Nice.
But I think, summer ice cream, a nice vanilla soft serve with sprinkles is just, it hits the spot.
That's very vanilla. Yeah.
It is it's so
Very
boring.
vanilla.
The sprinkles spice it up a little bit.
Okay.
Good. Samuel?
Nice. I would probably have to say favorite ice cream is probably like a Moose Tracks or Deer Tracks.
Okay.
Like
I can
the
see
chocolate
that.
peanut butter connection, and I like a little bit of crunch in my ice cream, not too bland. I like it nice and flavorful. So yeah, probably.
I feel like that was
Okay.
Yeah. How about you, Kelly?
Mine's mint chocolate chip. No
I think I knew
brainer.
that. I think I knew that.
Kelly, that was the second runner-up. We have the same food
gosh.
taste, I think.
We do.
Mint chocolate chip and sushi. How about that?
Yeah. Eat them together.
Blended together.
Oh, no.
So on that note,
Yes.
I was thinking of this this morning. This summer, we as a family went to Montreal, and I like ice cream. It's not my favorite dessert. I'm a cake guy. I love cake, chocolate cake in particular. But I like ice cream. But I ate this summer the best ice cream I've ever had in my life, and it was soft serve vanilla chocolate swirl.
Okay.
And it's this ice cream place in Montreal. So the next time you're in Montreal, you're in Montreal next month, right, Samuel?
No, not
Are you
me.
really? I was like,
That's not
what?
me. I wish. Sign me up.
Okay, so this ice cream place is called Unicone.
Okay.
So write it down, Unicone.
I am.
Okay. Now, they had some unique flavors. They had normal flavors, but they had some unique flavors. Their ice cream, what makes their ice cream incredible is it's creamy, a very, very creamy ice cream, which I love, and not really super sugary. Okay, so here's a couple of the flavors. Tell me yay or nay, okay? Mango sticky rice,
Yay.
Nay.
okay? Saffron pistachio,
Yay.
Yeah.
okay?
Go with that one.
Last one. This is a good one. Ube.
Can I have a definition?
Right. It's like,
I knew there was going to be a significant pause. Ube is a purple ice cream because it's made from yams, purple yams.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
It sounds beautiful. It sounds pretty. I would eat it. I'd try it.
It's very cool looking because it's purple. So, yeah. So the reason why I bring up ice cream is with ice cream, you have a lot of different flavors, right? Mm-hmm. And a big conversation we're going to have today, it's actually kind of a new thing we're going to do on the podcast, because every now and then I'll get questions about because we partner with a lot of different marriage counselors. Mm-hmm. Samuel, you're one of them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And guess what? I don't know if you know this, but you're like the featured guest of this episode.
You're kidding.
Yes, you knew that. So anyway, but there are different flavors or types of marriage counselors.
Very much so.
And one of the things we want to do is at least once a season, we want to invite a marriage counselor on and just what's their flavor? What are they like? And so, Samuel, you are the guinea pig.
I am honored. I'm honored. I really am.
I love the way you said that too, Kelly, that there's different flavors, because I think when you talk about marriage counseling, it can be you either have a preconceived notion of what it is, or you just expect that it's one thing, or someone told you about their experience. And so I think this is a really cool opportunity for everyone listening of like getting to know different counselors, and what a special privilege we have to actually talk with some people, and they don't have to schedule a visit and then go ask them what their flavor is. So that's fun. So as our honored guest here today, Samuel.
Yes, Corey.
Tell us a little bit about your flavor. What are some different kinds of marriage counseling that you know about? And then we'll kind of get into like what you specialize in.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, I'm honored to be on Together as a guest.
Your first time, right?
Actually,
first time caller. Long time listener.
As a guest, aka co-host. But in that space, what I found is so many marriage counselors have various different styles, as Kelly's adhering to. And, whether it be Gottman methodology, you have people go through phase 1, phase 2, training 3, and they go through this alternate training to get this credential, or they just use different principles in Gottman. To individuals who use...
Okay, wait a minute. Time out. Who's this Gottman guy?
John Gottman.
Good question.
From the great state of Washington.
Okay, tell me a little bit.
PhD guy who is, I think, more foremost known as a researcher in marriage and relationships, over 30 years of experience. Him and his wife, who is a therapist, has done some great research into how to help couples thrive, how to build a sound relationship house, which is sided by trust and commitment and layered with creating shared meaning and with the basis of love maps. Like, the ideology behind it is to help relationships who are, in most cases, trying to figure out how to navigate their relationship to make it stronger. And so they do a great job. I use some of their principles. We'll talk about that later. But just a great couple.
And haven't they done a bunch of like studying to like I remember watching a video of like brain sensors and all the science behind it too. And I feel like I remember them doing a lot of that kind of stuff too.
Very much so. You have solution-focused therapy. That is not one that I per se divvy into, but some couples really need that. Just like, give me the ground principles, let me run with it. How do I do this? And they're off and running. Then there's also reflective, narrative. You think about all the just regular approaches to therapy. Some people use that. I try to use a combination of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. We talk about thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. I use that a little bit with family systems. Because in my approach, I see a lot of clients dealing that coming from different cultural places, as well as different ethical aspects. And so those things are important when you're talking about how does the family system impact a couple and a marriage as well, in addition to Gottman. And so those are just a few. I know there's so many other narrative, so many other therapeutic approaches, Kelly and Corey, that different couples, different marriage counselors use. And I know one more that I'll mention just for the sake of it is emotionally focused therapy. That is probably one that, at least in the city of Grand Rapids, I know several marriage counselors that really try to focus in on that, because many cases when you're dealing with a couple, you have one that is more emotionally sensitive and one that is not. We won't get into genders today, but I think that space is really important to know how to bring those couples around that idea of emotion to be able to help them navigate nuances of their relationship. So, yeah.
Now, maybe this will get into it a little bit more. I have one kind of specific question about those things that you just said. If I'm looking at going with my spouse, Colin, to marriage therapy, marriage counseling, and I have like a specific topic, when I listen to your list that you just explained, I'm like solution focused. That's it.
Sure.
I have one thing in mind that I want to talk about. That's what I'm doing. How do I know, like, as a couple looking at these things, are we going to talk about that a little bit later too, of like, how do I know and what approach to look for?
Sure.
I guess just thinking through that, how would I not just look at solution focused?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think this is when I'll go back to this space, when you're asking to interview and talk to a counselor, that first 15 minutes, sometimes counselors offer this 15-minute consultation, is a great way to get to know your marriage counselor. It's sometimes free, depending on who you're talking to, but it gives you a chance to interview that counselor, say, hey, what's your style? What's your approach? Maybe they won't get into all the techniques that they use to help you, but they may just be able to soundly talk to you about, hey, this is kind of what counseling with me is going to look like, and how we would kind of navigate it based off a session by session approach.
I love that.
And I think asking that question and getting a chance to know the counselor before you make a commitment,
right,
no matter if that's 8 sessions or a year, you know, I think is an important part. And that's one thing that I do offer, you know, for those that ask, hey, can I just have 15 minutes of your time? We want to have this conversation about, you know, kind of what you do to help couples thrive. And also, guess what that counselor should ask? Probably going to ask you, hey, what are the things that you want to work on? Because some couples can come into a space and not necessarily know what they want to work on. And it's a little bit of discovery. It takes time. And that kind of gets into a question later on, but it's a little bit of discovery to find out what is it that they, and then there's some couples that come in like, we know specifically that we're having an issue or struggle here.
Right.
And we're not in a crisis, or we are in a crisis and we need some help.
A little teaser for it's someone told me once, it's never about what it's about. And I'm sure you find those things a lot. So before we get into the nitty gritty of all of these and your specialties, Sam, too,
sure.
I just want to know, Kelly and I and listeners want to know, like, what do you love about being a counselor? And also maybe.
Can we ask Kelly? I want to hear Kelly's answer on this too. But,
and what maybe don't you like also? But first, what do you love about being a counselor?
Yeah, I think for me, the key part is whenever someone first comes into the room, you see the nerves, you see the fears sometimes. Sometimes the discovery process is challenging because, like, oh my God, what's going to be revealed in this space? And I think building that rapport with that couple is probably one of the funnest and greatest things of counseling to me. You know, like, hey, let's build a connection. Number one, you're asking someone who's random, who's a third party, to come into your relationship and help you strengthen it, fix an issue, work on something. That takes a lot of vulnerability. And we have to, as therapists, respect the fact that, you know, it is taking that. It takes some level of just building that connection with them. And I think that is one of my favorite things that I love. You know, those first 2 or 3 sessions, like, hey, we're just building rapport, we're building connection, we're letting some trust be built here. One of my favorite phrases I tell couples is, hey, I am not here to say that you're right or you're right. I'm on the side of right, is what I often tell couples. And it's fun because, like, I'm kind of, you know, landing that plane, building a space for us to kind of have a shared, created space to make marriage counseling what it will be. And so rapport is something that I love about it, and this I love about being a counselor. And then overall, when you have worked with that couple and you're getting towards completion, it's that space where you feel like, you know what, they feel like they have gotten to a place where they've met their goal or they've met a part of their goal, and that they feel strengthened enough with tools, skills, even practice abilities to be able to go on and grow. And I think that for me, that is a huge critical part of working with a couple, no matter how short or how long it may be, and seeing those two things come about.
Wow.
I want to go back to something, Samuel, you said, because I think it was really important. You said that when a couple or a client comes into the office for the first time to meet you, that they're nervous, and that is true. Last week, I can't remember who it was. It was a famous athlete. And they mentioned before every game, this was somebody really successful. Before every game, they're nervous. And I caught that. And something for people to learn, at least this is how I am. I would guess you're similar. Whenever I meet a couple for the first time, I'm a little nervous.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know where it's going. I don't know who this is. I don't know if I'm going to be able to help them. And therefore, I bring a little bit of nervousness. So if you're going into counseling, realize your counselor is probably a little nervous too.
Absolutely.
That's so, for me, as not a counselor at the table, I just realized. So thank you for giving me free counseling right now. I'm just kidding. That's so helpful to hear, you know, that you've some nerves going into it. Is you're not alone in that. Like,
and we're not the be all know all for it either. We're not God. You know, we just happen to have some training, some education. In Kelly's case, like 20 plus years of experience that can bring some marital support and thoughts to maybe help that couple grow from where they're at.
Right. Yeah. So, Kelly, anything else to add about what you love?
I got a really important question for you. What don't you like about counseling?
Yeah. I think, and I want to be very transparent here, as a therapist, in some cases, you can harp on yourself when you feel like a couple is not going to be successful, or it doesn't come out of counseling at success, or whatever you want to define that as. There have been many moments in my short but storied career of working as a therapist where you're like, if I could go back, we would have went to that issue faster, or if I could go back, I would have helped them work on this part a little bit longer, or give this technique, or you go through those things in your mind when you see couples who, don't ultimately have or meet the goal that they want to. Wow. And I think that is often cases a challenge, and something that you kind of load on your shoulders. And you can carry a while if you don't know how to, at the end of the day, give it to God, and say, Lord, at the end of the day, you have given me the ability to do this. And so when I keep connecting with you, whether I succeed or whether I fail, or whatever the definition is for that, I bring it back to you, say, Lord, help me to become and do better with the people that you want me to serve.
Wow. And
I think that that's an important part of that role in marital counseling. Bringing it back to God. Otherwise, you do carry it on your shoulders, which I have.
Right.
Times of fast.
Well, and like you said, too, you're entering into that space with them. Yeah. Like you're sharing and building a bridge. And yes, you have a role of, yes, I'm an expert. I can help share some things, but you're entering into that relationship. So the weight of that, for sure, can fall on you, I bet.
Very much so.
Yeah. I think it's maybe one of the most amazing jobs, but it's taxing because what I always try to remind myself when I'm meeting with somebody in these significant conversations is that this is a sacred conversation.
Very much so.
And God needs to be a part of it. And I need to be spot on in what I'm saying. You think of the verse in Scripture, I think it's James, where the writer says, many of you should not want to be teachers because you are going to be scrutinized by God by what you say.
So true.
And so, it's a beautiful, beautiful career, and but it's challenging to say the least.
Yeah, it's almost like being a pastor in a sense. You're responsible for someone's soul, especially if they've given you access to that space, and doing that and having done that, there's an importance, almost a tension that you have to have in that space, because you have access to their mind, to their habits of life, and helping them navigate that. So absolutely, Kelly.
Yeah. So let's dive in. Let's see what kind of flavor you are.
I'm so excited to
Ice
learn.
cream.
Our question for you, Samuel, we're going to do kind of a deep dive here, is how do you uniquely counsel couples?
Yeah. So I have an approach, and typically with couples, I do use some, again, I said Gottman methodology. There's this approach that he has encouraged and that I use kind of like the first 3 or 4 sessions. It's really all about discovery. It's about, hey, as a couple, what are some of the core things that you've had some trouble spots in? Identifying those things. But while I'm identifying those things and asking those questions, a lot of cases, I'm looking at that couple and watching the signs, like how close are they sitting on the couch?
I've always wondered if counselors watch for that. Are they?
What's your body language?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
What kind of tension do you have on your face and your hands? Are your arms just crossed? I'm reading all those signs. I'm also listening to how they relate and talk to each other. In many cases, you can tell in that first session. I think in navigating, when we're watching the couple, again, you're listening for the words that they use too, right? And their shared meaning, or if they have even a knowledge of each other's world in that moment. And you can often tell in that first session, where they're struggling at, where they're sitting at, what kind of things they might have been talking about last night and that's been bothersome for them, or something that they've been holding for a long time. One thing that I almost underwise kind of encourage is this place of them to see how they fight. Do they fight fair is a wording that we use in this type of methodology. Are they combative? Are they stonewalling? Are they defensive in the way that they talk about things? And in that first session, do they even look at each other? Or are they just talking about each other? In that first session, are often cases signs to things that we can have in the discovery process. So that first session really is focused on how they are navigating each other. In that second and third session for me, I often split them up. and I get a chance to do some individual history.
Okay.
Just to kind of understand a little bit about how they think about the world. Here's a word for you, schemas.
Schemas.
Which are
That's a cool word.
Yeah, which are their patterns and history of their thinking and how that then informs their world.
Wow.
I think that that's important for me to know. And so I listen to their histories. And sometimes in those third and fourth sessions, or those second and third sessions where they're just talking individually, they start to talk a little bit more about, hey, so I didn't say this during my first session, and I feel this way, or I think this way about myself or my spouse, or this is something that they're struggling with that they just don't get. And so in those stories, I can think of one where, a client came in, second session, I'm cheating,
Oh boy.
and I'm like, hey, does your spouse know? No. And
Wow.
so in having that information, it's like, so why are you still in the marriage or in the relationship? What are you doing about it? Are you stopping? Are you starting? Where is your spouse going to feel or think about this once this happens? And I remember that client talking about that from a space of, you know what, I'm not ready to be done. In fact, I'm ready to move on. So what's marriage counseling for you about in this case?
Right.
And I think as we, again, get into this, so many people come for so many different reasons. And in that discovery process, which is why it's so beneficial and needed, in the way that I give it at least, you find out what is the main thing for them and why are they here? Are they here to break up? And just said that they went to marriage counseling. Are they here to actually strengthen an issue where, hey, I'm struggling with porn, I'm struggling with a sex addiction, I'm struggling with this, and it's impacting the marriage. So what do we do in helping them together? Or are they just there for strengthening? Like, hey, Sam, we really want to build a better communication style for the next 10 years.
Right.
And I think that that's a critical part of that discovery process in those first 3 and 4 sessions. So that way, when we get to the next session and they're back together, we begin to work towards the main thing or the main issue for them. Like Kelly says, and he's mentioned in the past, kind of like hey, what's the top 1, 2, 3, and how do we work on those things from this time out? So that's typically my approach.
Okay, so I want to just so our listeners understand this. So first session, you're working with them as a couple, and in the next 1 or 2, you're going to work
sessions.
Individually, and the main reason there is you want to make sure you're getting the full story.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
got it.
Yep. So that way, when we move on from there, typically that fourth session and on, we're working on those things that were brought out. And also, for some couples, I do give them a nice lengthy assessment. So that way, anything that they couldn't think about or process, they could also have the other learning style of being able to write it out and talk about it through an assessment. So typically that's what I do, those first 4 sessions, and that helps us. With that being said, I think that another piece of this is making sure that as a marriage counselor, I am not a referee in that space. Sometimes you get into moments where you go, no, you're right, right? And that's that's not the case. That's not the goal of what we're supposed to do in marriage counseling. I think the goal is to help coach them. As counselors, we have different roles in that space. In that space, as you build and grow rapport and connection, I think you become a coach, Kelly, and you begin to help them navigate things from a space of, number one, if you were my 2 players on the field, not that you ever have 2 players on the field, but if you were my 2 players on the field and you had a football in your hand, how do you all work together? Because you might look to me as a coach maybe once or twice or 3 times or 4 times during that game for some direction, but ultimately you've been practicing this for a long time. So how do we help you maybe refine some of the ways that you practice so that way when you're in the game, you're able to navigate things and work through things. And it's just a flow at that point where I can direct you, but you're playing out these plays. You're doing the things to be successful, to get the touchdown, in a sense.
I love that picture of you're practicing it. And this might be a 2-part question, but you said there's an assessment. And then if you have the role of like a coach, do you prescribe homework?
I do.
For couples?
Yeah,
or
I'm
what
a
does that
homework
look
guy.
like?
I'm a homework guy. Now, I will say this first and foremost. I'm a reflection guy, too. I try to help that couple reflect on their schemas, their patterns of behavior and thought, to say, how possibly did we get here? So I do a little bit of past reflection. How do we get here? But then moving forward, staying in the here and now, how do we help that couple begin to methodically practice the things that they're saying they want to do to help their marriage thrive. And so the assessment often cases brings some of the things out of what they think. But then from the assessment, it allows us to begin to build on now what can you do to begin to work the things out that are needed to help be a better spouse and be a better partner to your spouse in that space. And so that's kind of what I do. If that answers the question.
Yeah, I think from the outside looking into your professions, excuse me, I think when I look at counseling, some can be very like tool based, like, okay, we're going to give you, and that's what I expect from counseling too, whether that's right or wrong, of I'm going to get some tools to take home.
Yeah.
So you said, so if I'm understanding correctly, Sam, you're a mixture of tools, but also reflection. Because I think sometimes couples goes in and say like, I just don't want to talk about everything. I want to do something.
Absolutely.
So is there a balance there, or when do you know when there's tools or when it's reflection mode?
Yeah, I think it is a balance there. I think reflection is good. And Kelly, I'd love to hear your thoughts too. I think reflection is good in those first couple of sessions, right? You're saying, again, how did we get here? What happened? But then when we start to build into, number one, using the tools in session, and I'll give you a quick caveat here. One of my favorite tools to use is this thing called the emotional communication game.
Let's hear about it.
I'm excited. Yeah.
In the emotional communication game, the guys behind it is, I think you're thinking this. And if you're thinking this, is it right?
So will you make them say, I think you're thinking this?
So we'll have questions. For example, my spouse says to me to take out the trash. And that person will then go through this 3 multiple choice answer. Okay, my spouse said to me to take out the trash. Well, I think they literally mean just take out the trash. A. Or B. No, they are saying that I didn't take out the trash last night, so they're harping on me to make sure I take out the trash in the future. Or is it C? Like they just want to have an opportunity to know that I hear their voice. And so they're asking, there's not a right answer. They're
and all the listeners are like, yes, C. No, C.
They're going to answer that question, and then they're both going to answer it and see if they were right. And so in that space, all that says is that we have many cases, various perspectives or thought processes about what our spouse actually means or is actually feeling at that moment. And sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. And in that space, it gives us an opportunity to think about, how does my spouse actually communicate certain things and what do they mean? And am I taking things through my own thought process of, here's another word, persona of that person? Or am I just thinking about this from a space of, you know what, in my experience, this is how my spouse really is. And I need to make sure that I'm being conscious of that moment, of that person's emotion, of that person's voice inflection, all those things, and how that relates to them at that point when they're sharing communication or they're sharing something. And so when we use that tool, for example, now we've practiced it in session and I give them a page, it's like 3-4 pages long. Now, hey, when you are struggling to have a conversation, you're struggling to talk, why don't you just ask one of these questions and see what they think? And y'all go bounce back and forth. That gives them opportunity to now practice what we've done in session and do something. It's one of my favorite tools.
That's awesome. No, it's cool to hear different tools and what actually happens in the room, in the moment, you know. So one more question, Kelly. I'm just really
You're good.
peppering questions.
You're good.
Sure. I think because too, like I'm so curious, and you know, listeners, I hope this is impactful too. Of like, what is this like? Maybe you've been thinking about getting starting marriage counseling, and so hopefully this is helpful for you. But as a believer too,
Sure,
Sam, how do you bring that into it? Do you let your clients bring that up, or how do you use that in your approach of, hey, let's look? I mean, in the beginning,
that's a great question.
you said, you know, like I want to rely on God, and how do you do that?
Yeah. So typically in our first session of discovery, it definitely comes out where that person or where that couple's at. I think there's so much of a wide range of where we find couples. I'll give you an example, a couple examples. One couple where there's an individual who is faith-filled, going to church, all those types of things, and you have a spouse who does not, who may be actually very much not religious in a sense. You have that couple. Then you have a couple that they're both going to church. They're both entrenched. They're both servers, to use some Kelly Bonawell terminology. And in that space, all of a sudden, you know, they're just having an issue or something. And then you have couples that come in that just don't believe at all. And I see all three of those people, all three of those couples. And in my approach, most often during the first session, that does come out like, hey, so what is, here's one. Here's what I ask, what is your anchor? What's anchoring you? What's anchoring you?
That's a great question, Samuel.
In often cases, that reveals a lot about their heart structure and the way that they process information, what's really leading them. For the couples that do have some level of a faith focus, or they are in some way, shape, or form believers, they often are ones that I can begin to utilize biblical analogies and biblical thought processes with, because that's the undergirdings of their foundation. For other couples, most often what I find is I'm able to drop stories or things, and I let them know, hey, so one of my focuses or one of my things that anchor me is my faith. And so here's something that I found that be helpful. In that way, in our profession, we often cases have to be careful about how we say and what we say about those things, from both the level of influence as well as, hey, how would a regular person, an individual who maybe doesn't believe, personify this? And can they say, hey, this is something that they brought up and they're trying to convert me, right? Mm-hmm. And so in our profession, we are very craftful and very careful how we navigate that space. But for me, I often do cases bring those things up as a way to utilize analogies and stories, and also very rooted things that help them build and work through their foundation or through their marriage.
Here's a question on that note, Samuel. Some counselors have strong opinions about this.
Very much so.
And that is one of the questions every now and then I'll get from somebody who's requesting marriage counseling is, will my counselor pray for me or pray with me? If they're a Christian, what's your modality there? What do you do?
So number one, I'm a huge person, since we're talking about the Bible, where it says, I think it's in Amos, and I don't want to take this out of context, but I'm taking it for the purpose of this context. It says, if two can agree, or how can two walk unless they agree? In that space, I believe it is very important to be careful and conscious of if that couple agrees to what is needed or what can be gathered from counseling. And so in that space, guess what? If you ask me in session and your spouse doesn't agree to a space of prayer, guess what? Yeah, I'm going to pray for you. It might not be in this space, but I probably will still pray for you. Now, if they're in agreement that, hey, saying we desire and we need and want prayer here, right here in session, and I ask her, hey, would you mind if I prayed for you? In that case, because it was asked and because it was desired, yes, is my long answer to that question.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, I think all of my clients, whether all of my couples, whether they've received Jesus or they're not, I am praying for them, because I think that in all of it, that's who I am. And I believe that if I can offer what's going on in their lives up to the God that I believe in, then that gives me the opportunity to say, Lord, number one, I'm partnering with you to do this anyway. And so, Lord, help me to be able to be effective with them with the solutions and the answers that they need for that particular thing that they're navigating.
Wow.
Yeah.
What type of, another question, what type of clients are you really kind of looking for? You and I have talked a lot about this in the past.
Sure. Number one, I think this is crucial to this field. I'm looking for people who just need help. That's the first thing. They need help if they're working through things that they are struggling with in their marriage, or if they are in crisis, or if they are just needing some strengthening. I'm looking for them, number one, to help them and support them. I have, in my short time being in this space, seen a lot of individuals who have often been marginalized, who have often not gone to counseling traditionally. And so I see a lot of African-American couples. I see a lot of couples of different ethnicities, predominantly in my counseling practice. But I also seen couples, who are of the majority in some way, shape, or form. And so I think that is, for me, a space where I'm like, Jesus, come all. You're going to get what I believe God wants for you, and I happen to be a conduit of that. And so in that space, I have a desire, just to answer your question, Kelly, to see individuals and couples who haven't traditionally always gone, to be able to have a space to be able to go talk to someone that sometimes looks like them, that someone has a background like them, and that we can begin to share those things. But often cases, other than what we look like, we don't know what we've been through until that first session. So that is why I say the door is open in many cases to couples and individuals who are just needing support and need help and want to work through things to make their marriage better.
Wow. Thank you, Sam, for what you do and opening up that door to your clients.
For sure.
They're better for it too. So flip side of that question of who do you look for, and thinking about caseload and all that kind of stuff too. But what kinds of couples would, not just looking for, but like what kind of couples could use marriage counseling? Like should be looking for you, I guess, is the flip side of that question.
Yeah,
great question.
Yeah, I think I've kind of been talking a little bit about this, and I guess I'll use this terminology again. Is that couple just coming in for some strengthening? For example, I had a couple that came in and said, Sam, like, we're good. We've been in this thing 30 years and we've been doing well. But sometimes we have some hiccups. I feel like he or she doesn't understand a thing of why I do what I do. Okay, great. So you're telling me, I'll use summarization. You're telling me that this is the thing and you really just want to take maybe, I don't know, you define it 2, 3, 4 sessions to work through this so that way you feel like you have a better way to navigate this. That would be my definition of strengthening.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So marriage counseling doesn't have to be like for a year?
No.
Literally what
not
I
at
was
all.
going to ask.
Not at all, right? That's the couple of sessions approach, right? A couple of sessions for a couple. Where someone let's just work on something because we want to strengthen our marriage. Let's work on this aspect of communication. Let's work on this aspect of some creativity for our sex life. Let's work on this aspect we've been struggling to talk about finances and we just don't agree on this. We need some help. And sometimes that is just, again, the couple of sessions approach. And that's who comes to counseling. Then you also have those who are in a space of, we have a big hill to climb. We're not in crisis yet, but we have this big hill to climb, and we're trying to figure out how to do this thing together because I feel like we're worlds apart. We're on the same planet.
Same
But
planet.
not on the same page.
But not on the same page. And sometimes that's going to take a little bit longer. You know, that couple might be in counseling for 3 to 6 months or more.
Okay.
What might be, can you think of a client or two, and what were the issues where they had a big hill to climb?
Yeah. So I'll go basic here. I remember there was a couple, mixed ethnicity. One was actually from another country, and they were coming together and they were working towards the idea of wanting to have babies and have a family. But when it came to their family dynamic of how they were able to relate, one being American, another one being Ethiopian, like in their couple's relationship approach, they just could not seem to make their worlds connect.
Wow.
Culturally as well as familially, you know, and in that space, whether one visited the other or the other, it's like, we just don't seem to be on the same page. And in that space, it took 5 to 6 months to be able to have them say, okay, so when they say this, they mean that. Or when this person says this is what they mean. And they begin to work towards understanding both not only language, but also aspects of their representations of their culture, and how those things began to play a role in how they saw their worldview, and how they began to connect with each other. That would be an example, you know, of them navigating that space and taking time to do that. I will say, in my purview, Kelly, I think the distinct between someone who are worlds apart and trying to figure out this mountain to climb together and those that are in crisis, often cases, crisis to me looks like when someone is in a sexually abusive or a cheating situation where there's that happening, or in the case that I even put people who are in the space of navigating some level of porn addiction, and it's really impacting the marriage as another space. So I say, this might be where you're in crisis because you're ready to leave your spouse. You're ready to be done with them. And in that space where you're ready to come here and say, I came to counseling for a day and I'm telling them that I'm leaving them, we're in crisis at that point.
Right.
If you're ready to be done with the marriage. I think that for me is the differentiation point where they begin to navigate, okay, let's get through this crisis first and hopefully have a place to land. So that way we can get towards the issue-driven support, which is kind of, for me, a phase 2, where now we're working on that thing. You all have agreed to stay together. You all are agreeing to work on the marriage. And now we're just focusing on a topic to help you begin to build trust, build rapport again with each other, love each other, build love maps, all those things I've kind of talked about at the top of the podcast, to begin to work towards that thing. Now, there is a whole bunch of context that plays a role in that. And Cass Kelly, you know, but I think that for me, I kind of look at it that way. So that way I know who's coming to me. In most cases, they're not always sure. But when they do know, in most cases, it's kind of in those phase 2 or phase 3.
Well, that brings up another, you brought it up. I didn't bring it up. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But this is a tough question.
Sure.
In fact, we could do a whole episode on this question, but I just want you to give me a little teaser about it. You talked about crisis couples.
Sure.
What do you do? What does Samuel Jones do with crisis couples? So this is a marriage that, for all intents and purposes, whether it's an affair or it's been 30 years that the marriage is dead, it's a dead marriage or a nearly dead marriage. What's like one or two first steps that you start with that couple?
Yeah. So for me, Kelly, I think the key piece is, again, I said it kind of in the beginning, but helping them build some level of, hey, we aren't here to harm each other. You know, and the synonym I often say is we aren't here to hurt each other. We're just here to help each other understand. And that is the first thing I often start with in that first session. For whatever reason that we're here, we're building some level of connection, again, based off something that has disconnected us, that has caused a big chasm, a big gap in how we navigate things. That is the first part of, often cases, that the aspect of we're in the room now. Mm-hmm. We're in these 4 or 5 walls where we're trying to figure out how to work towards some level of dealing with the thing. Mm-hmm. The issue is the issue. Maybe not even the person is the issue. The issue is the issue is what I often say to couples. And so in navigating that, we're agreeing that there's an issue, but we're also agreeing that we got here by some place of some great chasm. Mm-hmm. And now that we're here, let's be willing to be here. And so in their willingness and their ideology of saying, yes, okay, I'm willing to do this no matter how long it takes or for a specific amount of takes to get to that space, that's the first place that we start at, Kelly. Especially in my practice, is being willing and being able to say that I'm willing to understand where you're coming from. That second phase after that, or the second thing that we typically do is, okay, let's get into your understanding of what's happening, your ideology of what's happening and how it may be hurting you or how it may be hurting you individually. Because in that space, we want each person to hear what's happened and how that's impacted them. Because at the end of the day, if they don't feel like they're heard, or they don't feel like they've been able to navigate what's going on in their heart, or they feel like they're just out in the air, which I have had couples in the past where like, I have no idea how we even got here. I think that's a crucial part of navigating just the first aspect of, again, building this level of, okay, there's some level of shared understanding of why we're here or what's happening. And sometimes there's a lot of pain that comes out of that, Kelly and Corey.
Oh, I'm sure.
There's a lot of pain of, so I did do this thing, or, so this particular thing that you did really hurt me. And I have not gotten past it these past 17 years. And I think that in that space, being able and willing to work towards that shared understanding then allows them to begin to work on some aspect of the issue. And I think that that's what's crucial for me when working with that couple. That at the end of the day, as a coach, because I'm not going to be in it the other 6 days that you're not here.
Right.
How do I help you get to a place where at least you've built some level of, I'm willing to connect with you and I'm willing to understand and I'm willing to work on the thing that we share that is a part of the issue. Because those other 6 days are crucial, because when they come back the next week or in 2 weeks, I want to know, hey, how did these time away go? Did you talk about it? Did you work through it? Did you use any of the tools to be able to feel like you're on some level of the same page, even though it hurts? Are you willing to keep working on this? That lets me know that week or 2 weeks that they're away, so that way we can continue to move towards whatever it is that they're needing to move towards in that space.
That's awesome, Samuel, because I like that approach, because basically what I heard you say is that the first phase of a couple getting counseling that's in crisis is simply listening to one another.
Absolutely.
So often with crisis couples, one or both of the people feel like, you're not hearing me.
I'm not heard.
And therefore, you're creating space where those voices can get spoken.
Absolutely.
So another question from me, this goes back to flavors. And this is a total generalization, but with some counselors, they are very direct. You know exactly what they think and what the direction that they're going.
Sure.
Other counselors are very indirect, meaning in a way they want their clients to figure out the problem before they tell them what the solution is. And again, this is flavor. Some people like vanilla and some people like ube ice cream, right? Ube would be a direct counselor. Vanilla would be maybe indirect. What are you in that realm? Are you ube or are you vanilla?
Well, remember my favorite ice cream. What was it? Deer tracks, the moose tracks, right?
Yeah.
A mix.
Yeah.
And very much so I am that. I think if you listen to my style, often cases, I am trying to be a very eclectic and try to approach the couple based off where they are at. And guess what? When you're dealing with a couple, you're dealing with two personalities, two individuals, and they're often cases in two different places. So even in counseling, I have found myself with someone who needs me to be direct, being direct. And someone who needs me to circle the wagon, to circle the wagon. And often cases, that has been what's been helpful in building, again, that rapport, helping them build a space together. And that's just my approach is blending both. Very, very, not very often, Kelly and Corey, do I find myself having to deal with the same type of personality style. Very rarely for me. But when I do, if I have had to, it's been two people that need a very direct space. That's been my history.
Okay. I got one more question, and Corey, I want you to ask a bunch. This is kind of a unique question in that, because again, counselors have very strong feelings about this. In Gottman, a Gottman therapist will not work with a couple if there is an active affair. Okay. Some counselors will. What's your position on that?
So, number one, I said, if you are a couple and you know something's wrong, something's needed, and you're not sure what's going on, I want you to come because someone's hurting, someone's in pain, or both individuals are in pain. In the discovery process, we find out what's often cases happening. My history has been that in that space, if someone's needing support and they find out that there's an active affair, my question to that couple or even to the individual who, for the lack of a better word, is perpetrating the action, is often cases, do you want this relationship and are you going to stop? And that'll let me know right then and there how active it actually is, because there is the perspective sometimes that if it has gone on until that point, it's active. But is that person willing to stop? I think it's a willing question to ask. And if they are, and they do, and they show the action to say, I'm stopping, I'm not doing this, I'm definitely willing to work with them. But I think that in that space, if a person is not willing, you're telling me right there that you don't want to be in a monogamous relationship, and which for me, if I'm putting a line in the sand, I do not work with polyamorous relationships.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I have a few more questions just for how you do it, how you counsel.
This is great,
Sam.
by the way. This is a lot of fun.
Good. I feel like I'm learning a lot too.
Sure.
And maybe I like to ask 2-part questions. I think I have one, and then it turns
You're
into
great
2
at
or
two-part
4.
questions.
We'll see. And maybe you can tell me if this is the wrong question to be asking to counselors. But when, Sam, do you say, I think we're done here, you guys are good to go? Like, when do you
Great
release
question,
them into
Corey.
the wild? When are you done coaching?
Yeah. Well, first, I think in that first couple sessions, again, you kind of get a discovery of what's needed. And when you know a goal has been met, you know a goal has been met. I think there's agreement there between yourself and the couple of saying, okay, hey, you've practiced, the skills that you needed. You talked about the things that you're talking about. You feel like you can go out in the world and take care of your business. And I'm a coach still, but I'm not a crutch. And I think that space for me begins to help where you're working with a couple and you can tell when now it's beginning to be more of a dependent relationship. And I think that in that space, as a therapist, you have to know, am I being dependent upon or am I still coaching?
Wow.
Am I helping and supporting, or am I now being someone that they're relying upon to deal with the nuances of their life? Because this is your marriage.
Right.
It's not mine. I go home at night to my wife, Tova J. Jones.
Shout out.
And my kids. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that they feel like they can take the tools and skills and abilities and work those things out. And for me, knowing that they can and that they have practiced in that space is one thing that's a sign for me. And that they're also willing to say, hey, when I ask you this question, can you do it? If you can do it, which I know you can, great, go do it. Thrive. Be successful.
Yes, thrive. Have you had it too where it's like, we're good, we've all agreed on the...
And people come back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And coming back is not a sign of failure in any level of your marriage. It's a sign that you're doing the things you're supposed to do. Evaluate.
Absolutely.
Have a check-in.
Can you say that again one more time?
Yes.
It's not a fail.
Yeah, you have not failed if there's something else going on in your relationship. You're just doing a marriage check-in. You're doing an evaluation, And I think that even in evaluating, whether you're going to a therapist or you're going to a marriage enrichment event, which I hear Ada has one of those, you have those types of things to be able to help enrich your relationship.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many tools too outside of counseling, which is awesome. But this is a huge one, at least, especially if you're in crisis or preventative or looking up a big hill too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Samuel, what do you hope for the future of your practice?
Yeah. First and foremost, I want to say thank you, Kelly. I don't know if anyone's ever really truly thanked you on air. But I think a really significant moment and trajectory and change in my life has been when Kelly came into it, early 2015, 16. I'm a student at Grambus Theological Seminary, aka Cornerstone University. And he's just a professor online that I meet in this counseling profession. But from there, this man has made so much impact in my career trajectory, from being on staff at Ada to opening a private practice to being the therapist that I am now today. His methodologies, his theories, his book, so much of what he has shared and said in his moments of just one-on-one with me has been so impactful. And so in that space, when you talk about Samuel, you can't say Samuel without saying Kelly Bonnewell. And I want to say thank you, sir.
Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you, sir.
That's very meaningful to me.
Thank you, sir. So in that space, I will also, to answer your question, which I forgot what it was.
No, I love taking that moment because Kelly is the reason why we're here, Yeah.
What's the future?
Yeah, what's the future? I think for me, the place of growing the Wisdom Center Counseling Services is, to be a pinnacle of the community that we share and live space in and supporting the community. We are in the Grand Rapids and Kentwood area, and to be able to support individuals, so again, who have never been to counseling, couples who've never been to counseling, as well as couples who are in the space of where I've tried this or tried that, and I just need to go get a check-in, or I need to work on this issue, this mountain, being able to be there for them. That's the space for me. Of course, growing it, of course, being able to have it be in several different places and not just in the state of Michigan is important. We are licensed in Texas. And so being able to provide that space for those who are hurting, who are in a place of need and support, is very important to me and critical to me. Yeah.
I love hearing that because you probably have both reasons why you got into it and why you do this. And so to hear your passion for new clients or people who are scared, that's really cool.
Yeah. And then just secondary to that, I am a licensed supervisor, just like my predecessor. And as a supervisor, I would love to continually train great clinicians who have a heart for this work, who won't get burnt out by this work, but want to do it and help be an impact and an influence in people's lives. So I do offer supervision in both states as well.
Samuel, thanks so much for being on the podcast, for being the guinea pig.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because we want to continue this. Now, I do want to give you kind of on a high note, like, how do people reach you if they want to glean some of these amazing services you offer?
Sure. So you can reach me by my website. It's www.theprincipalthing.com. Not principal like a person that's over at school, but principal with PLE. And you can reach me on that, as well as go to our social media, which literally is Wisdom Center Counseling, and reach us through that to get in and get some support.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the episode.
For sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Samuel. This has been, I feel like I've learned a ton. What was the word we said before? Schemas? And
Schemas.
And personas.
And personas. Yes. I feel like
And ube.
Wow. So many new vocabulary words today. Oh, man. Well, we have had a blast. What an incredible time we've had together. Listeners, if you feel the same and you've learned a ton or something, we'd love to know how you've been impacted by what you've heard. There's a lot of different ways to reach out and let us know, whether it's commenting or leaving a review on your podcasting platform, however you listen. So don't forget, you can also email us too at care@adabible.org. And for Corey and or did I say Samuel? Because you're also a host too. For Kelly and Corey, it's Samuel. This has been Together.
Thanks for listening to Twogether. We hope you've learned a thing or two. If you find the podcast helpful, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your listening platform, leave a comment, and give us a 5-star rating. If you'd like more information on Ada Bible Church and its ministries, or someone to pray or dialogue with about your marriage, go online and check out our website at adabible.org.